Welcome to the Thrive with Omu podcast, where each week I'll chat with an amazing entrepreneur on their growth journey. They'll be sharing this with us to help and encourage us to take that bold step. Today I have with me a young, beautiful lady, Kellina Powell. She's an author, an international speaker, and she's a coach. But you know, the good thing and what makes her stand out is that she coaches people living with disabilities. Her name is Kellina Powell. Kellina, I'm so happy to have you on my podcast.
Stephanie, thank you so much for having me.
How are you today?
I'm doing good. It's been a little busy for me, but I'm still holding up okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Just introduce yourself.
Definitely. So my name is Kellina. I am so many things that you mentioned too. However, I'm also a deaf advocacy. Try to teach people how to be inclusive for the deaf community. Little do people know, I am actually a deaf person myself. I became deaf at the age of 4 due to an ear infection. We will get into more about how I became deaf in the story, so stay tuned. And but yeah, I'm super excited, and that's about me.
So I've met in the course of work, I've met several coaches and speakers. I have never met one who works specifically with people living with disabilities. What led you to carve that niche for yourself?
It all started when I became deaf at the age of 4 due to lack of reputation, mentors. There was no, and also true because the disability community is very small, but also big. And as well, there are not a lot of support and resource for us. And when I was growing up, I didn't have anyone that looked like me or anyone that I could go to. For example, teachers and therapists or anyway, especially walking down the street, I did not meet anyone that looks like myself. And so that's what leads me to really on coaching, because I want to make an impact on others, especially those who, because there's not a lot of message about the mental health system in the disability community, just because, having a disability does carry a lot, especially myself who suffer from anxiety and sometimes depression as well. And that's where they need to become a coach, because I did really want to help the next generation, even adults too, to let them know that they're not alone and there are still hope in the future.
How was it growing up being deaf, and considering how did you discover you were deaf at the age of 4, and how was it growing up?
Definitely. So when I became deaf at the age of 4, due to the infection, I would attend to daycare, and there was an eardrop instruction. Like there was a specific instruction for the daycare to take. They did not follow the instruction. That same day, I became deaf. Where on my way home, so the time of when I was on my way home, sitting down watching TV, and that's when my ear dropped. And so ever since I became deaf, that stuck in, I didn't know what was happening. I was confused, I was lost. Imagine, I was only 4 years old. I didn't develop vocabulary where my mom could understand what's happening to me. And I just looked at my mom and said, I can't hear you. She called my grandmother to rush from the hospital, because my grandmother was actually a nurse at the time. Luckily, I was very grateful and lucky at the time. And my grandmother did some sessions with me at home. And my grandma noticed that I couldn't hear. And she's like, okay, we need to call the family doctor. We went to the family doctor the next day. The family doctor said, there's nothing we can do. Kellina is deaf. It's too late to do anything. And it all happened because of the daycare who did not follow instruction. So during that time frame, I was very confused. I was lost because I couldn't hear what's happening. And I keep seeing things. My doctor kept touching my ears. And I was just like, stop touching my ears so much. And I was 4. I'm like, what's happening? And when my doctor recommended me to an audiologist, I was even more confused because I'm like, why am I seeing another doctor or specialist, right? And again, I can't hear. I don't know. I was confused. I was crying because I was like, why can I not hear? And I was so frustrated because I don't know what was happening to me. And it's unfortunate because I couldn't read writing. So even if you write to me, I would understand, but like I wouldn't fully get it because I'm 4 years old. And I was very lost again. And then when I was growing up, I had a lot of challenges just because I had to go through speech therapists to pick up my vocabulary again versus when I was not deaf, because I hear words different when I became deaf. So that was something I had to go through a lot when I was growing up. It really reprogramming the sounds again and re-hearing it. So it was very difficult for me to communicate with someone who was hearing versus the deaf community. And because deaf community, we communicate through ASL and not verbally like speaking like I am right now, versus the hearing school where I had to force myself to speak. My family wanted me to speak too. They want me to learn and do ASL at the same time because I'm the only one in my family that is deaf too. So it's very hard, and it was hard for my family to learn how do we communicate with a little girl who's deaf and she's 4. She doesn't know what to expect, right? And so, yes, I did face a lot of bullying when I was growing up, especially people pick on me the way I speak. And, people pick on me because I may get a lot of attention through the school system when I was in the hearing school because I was getting a lot of teachers' attention where I needed attention to, because I read lips. A lot of people are not aware of that. A lot of deaf people rely on lips to understand what is going on.
I was actually going to ask, but you've answered a bit of it. I was going to ask how you learn your vocabulary. You must have started late. So how did you pick up the words and all that? Did you have to have a special teacher? Did you have to drop a class or something?
So basically I did 2 programs with 2 different specialists. So the first one is with my audiologist. They have programs for kids who was not born deaf, but became deaf after. So there was a program for me to do after school. And I was a speech therapist where they teach me words and how to pronounce different things. So that's how I was able to understand words better. And as well, my hearing aid. So my hearing aid helped me to understand the sound. It may not always click to me right away, but it takes some time for me to hear and let me listen. I'm like, okay. Back in the day, hearing aid was not strong as it is right now because technology has improved a lot. And so I'm grateful for my hearing aid because it's Bluetooth. So I'm able to hear everything through my ears instead of hearing everything through my phone, instead of putting it directly to my ears, instead of having to listen. So it's very cool that I could just put it connect it to my hearing aid without having to do anything like that. I can hear very clearly now, especially everything that comes in through my phone, or even watching TV, or even on my iMac, my laptop, or anything like that.
That's awesome. So how all this must have affected you mentally somewhat.
Can you repeat that one more time? Sorry.
All going through that phase of being deaf and learning to speak and learning to hear again must have affected you mentally somehow.
Yeah, it was hard. I would say that it's not easy. It's a roller coaster. The one thing I would say is that I have a really strong support system in my family. If it wasn't for my family, yeah, so my family were big on it. They were never slacking. And my family are very big. We're a very big family, but we were always close no matter what, just because my grandma is actually an immigrant. So she relied on community heavily, and she relied on families a lot. So thankfully, my family was always there supporting me, always backing me up, and just making sure that I have everything that I need. If it wasn't for them, I would not know what I need, to be honest.
Awesome. Bless them. Bless them. So, did you have to go through therapy? How did you get to, I mean, because you've accomplished so much. You've written a book, you're now an international speaker, and you're living your best life. How did you overcome all those limiting beliefs and all those I'm sure you must have been hearing all sorts of voices in your head and things like that. How did you overcome that?
Honestly, it all started by a true story that happened to me. So the first one, so one story that happened was I was actually working. My hair was in a ponytail. Hearing aid was showing. Christina, I was deaf. I was full of work. I did not care. And that's when I started building my confidence. And I was like, listen, if you're going to make fun of me, go ahead. I've been bullied all my life, so I don't care. And I was used to it. So I'm like, I don't care. And so that one time, a little boy came to me. And he's like, Miss. And I said, oh, are you lost? Because I used to work at a big park for little kids. And he's like, no, I just want to let you know that I am deaf too. And he pointed in his ear saying that he had hearing aid too. I'm like, oh my God, no way. And it was super cute. And we were talking, and the mom came. She's like, oh my God, thank goodness. And she thought her son was lost. And she came to me. She's like, wait a second. And she looked at my ears and said, you're deaf too. And I said, yeah. And she's like, thank God. And I was like, pardon? And then she's like, I've been trying to convince my son that he's okay, even though he's deaf. It doesn't mean he's deafened. And I was like, oh my God. And then she's like, since he's seen you, you give him that confidence, that hope that it's okay and he can still achieve it. And I looked at that little boy and I said, you can do anything, whatever you want to do. Don't make no one tell you different. And he's like, okay, man. And it was so cute. It was such a cute.
That's so sweet.
It was super sweet. And the mom and I had actually had a conversation because she was asking me for resources and support system, because you don't hear a lot about the deaf community. It's very small, unfortunately. There's not a lot of reputation. And she was telling me, and she said, since you did something so small, you're going to make a change in the future. I just hope you keep going. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, I love that woman. And I'm like, oh my God. And so it was that was a wonderful story. But the second story was, I started university. I was struggling a lot, and it was because of the teachers not accommodating me a lot. And the point where I'm asking for professors for a note based on the lectures, because the lectures are loud, and it was like a movie theater in university. And I tried to advocate for myself, but it's very difficult because professors are busy. They're not going to have time to send it out to you, and it didn't work out. And that one class I had was a math class. And I was sitting down, a professor said, wait a minute, hold on. I need to change my hearing aid battery. He paused the whole lecture, and he said, I need to change my mouth was like, did he just said, hold on, he can change his hearing aid battery? So I was like, wait, did I hear that correct? And imagine though, he was changing his hearing aid battery in front of the whole lecture. And I was like, oh, we need to have a conversation after class, because you're deaf and you're a professor? No way. You need to come and talk to me too. And I had a conversation with him about how did he overcome so many things. And he said, just like how you came to me, if I did not pause the lecture and said what I said, I wouldn't know. I would have given someone else hope in the deaf community. And look at you. You just came to me and you showed me why I should keep going, because all of us are struggling. All of us are having struggled in our lives, school, and so on. It's because you just never know who's watching you. You have to keep moving forward, because anybody can be inspired by your story. And that instantly clicked with me. And I said, oh my God, I'm going to do well once I get out of university. And that's when I looked into other ways to become I have a psychology degree, but I wanted to do something more meaningful, like coaching And so I did my website, I did my research, and I looked it up. What can I do with my psychology degree instead of being a psychologist? And I saw coaching, and I thought, oh my God, maybe this is something I can do instead of becoming a psychologist. And it's phenomenal how I found a mentor who does coaching. I guide through her, and she also said to me, I never met anyone that is a deaf coach. And I was like, really? And she's like, no, like you should be a coach and keep going because you're going to make changes in people's life. And that's how I overcome it, by hearing so many people keep telling me, keep going, especially unexpected scene or episode in your life where, for example, my professor, I had no idea. Sometimes you just never know. Yeah, you just never know.
That is awesome. You've done really well. You've done really well. Can you tell us a bit about your book?
Yeah, definitely. My book is called Every Day I Am Just Deaf. It's a very poetry book.
Every day I am
just deaf.
Dressed up.
Deaf.
Every day I am dressed up.
No, every day I am just deaf.
I am.
Every day I am just deaf.
Oh, okay. And what's it about?
It's about me being deaf in the hearing community, what it's like, and also to understand what it's like to be in a deaf shoe. What do I face every day? My struggle, relationship, school, workplace, anything that is daily basic life. I really teach people, what can we do better, especially in the hearing community? What can we do better to accommodate someone that is deaf? What can we do? So my book is really on educational and inspirational stories because it's poetry, and I know a lot of people like poetry. So I did my book on poetry instead of a full book, long story. No, it's poetry. It's pretty short. It's only 94 pages, and you can find it on Amazon.
Oh, we can't. I was just going to ask you where we could get it. So I'm going to look for, what did you say? What's the name again? Every day I am just deaf. Just deaf. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll look for it. That's I will definitely look for it. So now with the people living with disabilities that you work with, you don't limit yourself to just the deaf community, do you?
Yeah, so I do coach not just the disability community, but I also coach other people as well, because I know a lot of people get inspired by my story and they're like, I need to talk to this girl, or I need to talk to this woman because she went through so much more than I have, and I'm sure she can help me 10 times more because she's been through so much work than I have. So my doors are open for everybody.
Yeah, I think you really, really, really have done very well. Very well. So what would you say to people living with disability who would be listening to this podcast?
I would say my advice or my encouragement for someone is, tomorrow, you just never know what tomorrow is going to come. Life is too short. You cannot buckle down. You have to keep moving forward because you never know who needs you, who needs your voice, and who needs your support. You just never know. And life is too short. Why not?
Awesome. That is really deep. Awesome. Wow. I'm speechless because I'm looking at you, and there's no way, like when we did the first interview, I was saying to you that I'm looking, obviously this girl has no setbacks. She hasn't been through any setbacks. And then you dropped the bomb and you were smiling. I was a little taken aback. But then again, I went to bed and I was saying to myself, you really have no reason to complain. You should actually always be grateful. And, if I would point out, I think part of what would have helped you, there's a feel-good feeling that comes from helping other people. When you see that you're making other people smile, there's some satisfaction that comes with it. So it's actually very good and therapeutic that you're also helping people in that same community where you find yourself. And at the same time, if I were to coach someone living with disability, I'm almost certain that at some point they would say, oh, you really wouldn't understand what I'm saying. But when it's someone who is living with disability, coaching someone living with disability, then when you tell them to do something, they will know that you understand exactly what they're going through because you have walked down that path. So it's a good thing that you're there for that community, because I agree with you, it's a community that society tends to ignore or forget or, like downplay somehow. So it's good that you're there for them. What kind of platforms do you speak on, and what kind of topics do you speak about?
So I have Instagram. I make really fun content, educating about, we can do better with the deaf community. Second, I talk about my daily life so people can understand what it's like to be deaf. I talk about stories. I know everybody loves stories. And so you guys can mostly find me on Instagram. I don't use Twitter as much. And that's pretty much it. I'm trying to get back on TikTok, but TikTok's a little too much for me. So I'm gonna stick with Instagram.
I mean, if you could do jokes on Instagram, you should be able to do jokes on TikTok.
My Instagram is Deaf Queen Boss.
That's nice. Okay, so before we end the show, is there any other thing you want to share with us?
Honestly, I just wanted to say that don't be afraid to approach someone who have a disability. I know a lot of people always ask me, okay, Kellina, how do I be friends with them? How do I support them? And so the perfect way to support someone is really ask them what their needs are. Don't be afraid to ask, right? It's very important to ask because you don't
want. Because that's actually a question that's actually a very good question you just pointed out. How do we support? Because sometimes I see people with disability and I want to support, but I really don't know how. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do so that I don't rub you off wrongly.
Right.
So
Number one is, for sure. One thing to do is, number one, ask them. Don't be afraid to ask. I feel like once you don't ask, you're gonna cross the boundary of the independent. That's the key a lot of people don't understand. When you don't ask and you cross that line, personal line, especially independent, we will not offer or ask you for help in the future. That's number one. Number two.
Okay, so let me understand that. So if I had met you, I mean, not on the podcast and all that, you would rather I said, oh, Kellina, how can I be of assistance?
Yeah, that would be perfect. That's perfect because you're respecting me as a person who is deaf and you're respecting my accommodation. I see that you're asking me for what all my accommodations are. And that gives me a lot more, being more comfortable around you more, if that makes sense, because you're asking me what my needs are. So if you were to ask someone that have a disability, they will feel more comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely. Number two,
and you were going to give us the second one.
And number two is never reach out. So for example, if someone is on wheelchair or on handicap and you see them struggling to get over to the next street or next row or anything like that, you see them struggling, do not touch. Don't touch it. Don't touch.
You're kidding me. You're kidding me.
No,
I'll usually jump. I'll usually jump.
That's the problem. I know.
You're kidding me now. It means I must have offended a lot of people. because I mean, the minute I see them, even when I see blind people, I immediately go to hold them or try to, so that's wrong.
Yeah, you just don't do it. Just ask before you touch anything, because who knows? Maybe they don't need your help. Maybe they're used to it, right? It's very important to respect the disability independent, and because they're used to it, and we are comfortable doing things on our own. A lot of people are not aware of that. They're like, but they're struggling, Kellina. I know. Just ask. If they say no, then no. And that's the only way to support them.
That's interesting. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That's well noted. Thank you so much, Kellina. Thank you so much. That's been so helpful. And I'm sure that the listeners, a lot of the listeners will be like me, who would reach out to help without asking and think we're doing the right thing. Thank you.
Not a problem.
It's been a very nice 20-30 minutes with you today. And I'm sure that I'm going to get you back on this podcast at some point. Maybe when you write your second book.
Yay!
Thank you so much, Kellina. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Nice having you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And keep living your best life.
Yes, I am living my best life to the fullest as much as I can.
Thank you. Okay, then. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Thrive with Omu podcast. This is your host, Omu Obilo.